Hello friends, welcome back to this brand new video whereby we are going to discuss about the useEffect hook. In the previous video we discussed about the useState hook, whereby we looked at various scenarios where the useState hook can be used. We looked at various data types that can possibly be used in the initial state of a useState hook. We looked at number, string, array, object, and of course Boolean. We also looked at various examples and looked at how they can be used. So in this video we are going to be discussing about the useEffect hook. So let's first clean here and create some space for the useEffect. We are going to say useEffect. You can also have it here just for now. Let's save and check out in the browser. As you can see, it's here. Fantastic. So let's come here and get to discuss about the useEffect. So basically this is part of React hooks used for handling side effects in functional components. But you might think, what is a side effect exactly? Side effects are quite many, but we are going to be handling the most common side effects, and that is data fetching, subscriptions, and DOM manipulation. So we can even get right to them here. Basically, we are going to be handling DOM manipulation, data fetching, and of course subscriptions like that. So to start with, we are going to first discuss the basic syntax of a useEffect and get to understand it before we get to the side effects. So basically, to use a useEffect hook, like I said, hooks are functions, so we start by calling it. Every hook, be sure you are going to be start by calling it from React. And of course, you have to import it, and in my case, it is auto importing. So by just typing, you are going to see a link to import it and just click on it. I'm going to delete here the useEffect because we are done with it. However, we might need it, and when need arises, we are going to import it. For now, let's erase it and have something clean that we can all understand. So this is basically the useEffect hook, and this one here takes two parameters. One of them is optional and the other is compulsory, is not optional. So the first parameter is the callback function, like this, and this is where you get to write your side effects. And the second parameter is optional and is called the dependency array, like this. So basically this is the syntax for a useEffect hook. So let's first discuss briefly about this dependency array. Here by default, when you don't press it, the effect code written here is going to re-render every time one of the components re-render, or one of the things re-render that you have in the component. And when you press here an empty array, that means the code inside the useEffect is going to render once, it's going to run once. And when you ever press here something, let's say you have like a state variable, let's actually have it. I'm going to call it state. Let's actually use state. Use state like that. Let's initialize it as a number, maybe. And when we come here and say this effect runs when state changes, that's what's going to happen. When we pass here state as a dependency, so the useEffect is going to run every time the state changes. Otherwise, it's not going to run. Of course, by default, it runs when the page loads. So it runs the first time the page loads, and then runs again when this state here changes. So basically that's all with a dependency array. maybe inside here we can also possibly have more than one dependency. We can have like state 2 or dependence 2, something like that. You can have here as many state variables as you wish to have, but be sure that you need this effect to run every time any of these state variables change. So I will basically delete here for now, and we first get to write something here. Let's just write console log useEffect, just like that. I will save. Let's come and check it out. I will right click and inspect. I'll go to console. As you can see, useEffect hook is rendering twice, and this is because it should be rendering once, of course, but there is a problem. When we check out here, let's check out our main page. It's here. You realize our app is running in strict mode, so when we really get rid of this, we are going to have our useEffect render once as we expect. As you can see, it's rendering only once, which is basically what we expect. So from React 18, when you're working with strict mode, then be sure that every effect is going to render twice, the one that you expect to render once. So when you don't need that behavior, you can come here and get rid of the strict mode. But of course, it also has its own pros and cons. So maybe if you need me to make a video on this concept specifically, I'm not going to make it. So just drop a comment down below. So I'm going to consider it really. So let's proceed for now, and we are going to be moving to another section called DOM manipulation. In here, we can also have a basic example and then have a more advanced example after the basic one. So DOM manipulation will basically mean being able to manipulate the DOM by running an effect after something has happened. Let's first take an example of changing the document title when the page just loads. So we are going to write our useEffect as usual. The first parameter is our callback function, and of course the second parameter is a dependency array. For now, we are going to have it empty to run only once when the page loads. So inside here, we are going to say document.title, and we are going to set it to test title, just like that. Let's save and try again. So when we come here, we are going to load the page. As you can see, when the document has loaded, the title changes to our shared title, which is basically this title, the one we just ran from our useEffect. When you realize very well the default title is not this, the default title is Vite plus React, but when we load the page, that's when we are able to load this title, and this is because we are rendering it once because of the empty dependence array and when the page has just loaded. So basically, this is a basic example of DOM manipulation using a useEffect hook. Then also down here, we are going to discuss about data fetching. In this example, we are going to be fetching data from an online API such that we get to grasp the concept very well by dealing with actual data from an online API. In this tutorial, we are going to be using JSON placeholder. To do that, we are going to visit jsonplaceholder.typeicon.com. As you can see, it is a free fake API for testing and prototyping. So let's scroll down here. We are going to find a section for resources. For example, when we come here and hit /posts, you are going to come here and get a list of posts. Of course, it's just a fake API, but it's good for learning how to make these API calls. So we are going to be using it. For example, let's start by fetching all the posts. Let's copy here and come here to our useEffect. Like we said, the first thing is to call the useEffect function from React, and the first parameter is the callback function, and of course the second parameter is the dependency array. And for now we are going to have an empty dependency array as well, such that it can fetch this data only once when the page loads. So basically we can come here and have our function for fetching. We can literally have our function outside the useEffect and just call it here, but for now we are going to write it inside the useEffect, and I highly recommend it. So we are going to say const get posts, and it's going to be an arrow function. So inside here we are going to have our try catch block like that. We are going to console log this error in case there is one, and inside here we are going to say const response. It's going to be await. Of course we forgot async here. This is an asynchronous operation, so we are going to use async and await here. It's going to be Axios, but of course we forgot async here. But of course we need something for making an API call. We can use fetch, we can use Axios, but for now we are going to use Axios because it's really better for me. I know fetch is built in, but it's really not appropriate for me. I highly recommend Axios, so we are going to be installing it. npm install Axios. Let's shrink down here. By the way, we can close. So we are going to say Axios .get, and inside here we are going to paste our URL, JSON placeholder.type icode.com/posts, and then that's all. We can just come here and console log response.data and get to look at our data. Of course, the last thing we need to do, we need to call our get posts function inside our useEffect, and also we need to import Axios from Axios. So we can come here and say import Axios from Axios. As you can see, it's here. We can proceed and get to look at our data in the console. Let's come here and check it out. As you can see, the posts are all here. Let's expand a little bit. Each post is an object, so you realize it is an array of objects. So let's check out each object. It has a body, ID, title, and user ID. Basically, this is the ID of the user that created this post, and this is the post title, and this is the post ID plus the post body. Okay, let's get to display here something like post title. Let's come here and check out how we can get to do that, to display our posts in here. Let's remove our useEffect hook, and down here we are going to say another div, and that's where we need to update our posts and store them in a state variable, whereby we can possibly access a state variable here. So we are going to come here and have a new state variable. Let's just call it posts, then set posts. It's going to be use state. Initially we are going to have it as an empty array. As you can see here, it is basically an array of objects, so it is an array. We are going to initialize our use state as an empty array and then update it here when we get response from the API. So basically, let's come here and say set posts and set it to response.data like that. So at the moment we have access to the posts inside here, inside our JSX. So we are going to say posts.map, and then we are going to have each post, and we can get to render it here. We can just say div, or we can say paragraph. We can just say post.title, like that. Of course, we need it in brackets as well. Let's first check out our posts and then get to understand this piece of code the more. As you can see, we have here our posts, but we need to make it scrollable and just have it inside here. Also, let's close here and close our console. Okay, the posts are here, but you realize they are really spanning, they are getting out of the page, so we can come back here and reduce. First, we are going to adjust the styles of inner wrapper. We can just come to our CSS file and say inner wrapper. As you can see, it has a width of 50% and a height of 60%. So we are going to say overflow Y, scroll, like that. As you can see, we are able to scroll inside here. So basically, this is what we needed. We can get to look at the posts, and it's something nice. By the way, we can render these posts anywhere. For example, we can render them in an ordered list or in an unordered list, anywhere. And since it is an array, we have access to all the array methods. For example, you might want to display only a few posts, and maybe as someone scrolls, keep on showing many more. You can get to implement that as well. Of course, we have very many projects coming whereby we are going to be using this method to be able to display such kind of data. So for now, we are just getting the syntax, and of course, after here, we are moving to a real-world project whereby we are going to be using all these methods and all these that we have to apply on something like this. So since it is an array, just know we have access to all the array methods. So let's proceed and maybe check out how we can get to display a post of someone, or get a post by post ID or user ID. Let's get back here on JSON placeholder. As you can see, these are just posts, but if we press let's come here on the routes, and let's first click here on posts/1 and look at whatever is returned. As you can see, when we pass here an ID, we are able to fetch a specific post according to the ID passed here. Let's also try that and get to see how we can achieve that in our useEffect. Being able to fetch a post by ID is something very necessary, something good to know, because in a real world setting, you are going to meet this scenario very many times. So let's come here also and say /1, meaning that 1 is our ID and is our post ID. Let's come and check it out. Okay, it's not coming, but of course we need to adjust our user interface to be able to cater for something like this. If you fetch a post by ID, then you are going to get an object, not an array, because you are going to get an object for that specific post. So we would need a state variable that can hold an object. So we can just say single post and set single post, and we are going to say use state. And now we are going to have an empty object for the start. And when we fetch a post by ID, we are going to get a single post, and we can get to update it here. We can basically get rid of this, and so does this. And when we come here, we can basically update. But maybe before we update, we can come here and comment this one also, like this. And when we come here, we can basically reload and get to check here. Okay, posts are still here. Let's first check out why we are not saving. We need to first save and come here. As you can see, they are gone. So we need to right click again and inspect. to be able to look at our single post, let's come here in the console. As you can see, an object is here, and it is basically representing a single post whose ID is the one we passed, which was ID 1. And as you can see, it's here. The one we passed is the post ID, not the user ID of the user that created the post. So you need to be able to differentiate those two as well, because at times you might need to fetch posts of a particular user. There you're also able to return an array of objects containing posts of that specific user, but when we fetch a post by ID, we are going to return only one post with that specific ID, because literally no post will have an ID similar to the other. That's why we are able to get one single object when we fetch a post by ID. Let's proceed and get to display it here. For example, we can just say post single post dot body like this. Also, I think we didn't update it. We need to come here and set single post and then set it to response dot data like that. Let's come here and check again. As you can see, our body is here. Let's screen here, and also we can close here. So basically this is our post body. So we are going to be using this method to be able to display data coming from an API. You can literally map through if it is an array of objects, or if it is an array, not necessarily an array of objects. And if you're fetching only a single field, you can just update your object and be able to use that object direct without mapping through or without doing anything. So after this, we are going to be moving to something different called subscription. Here we are going to take a very basic example of setting up a timer using setTimeout JavaScript function. So let's first write our useEffect and see how we are going to handle it and be able to understand this concept as well, because it is also very good to know when it comes to practical applications of a useEffect hook. The first parameter, like we said, is a callback, and the second one is an array, which is basically a dependency array. We are going to have an empty dependency array for now, to be able to run this effect only on mount or only once when the page has loaded. So inside here we are going to have our subscription code. So the first thing to do, we are going to have our timer. We are going to say set timeout, and we are going to run this after 3 seconds. We can just use 3 seconds. I think it's good for us to be able to see what is basically happening. And inside here, we can just console log timeout completed successfully, or just timeout completed like that. And by the way, to be able to understand it better, let's assign it a variable, because we have a lot more code to understand and it's good to know it all. Let's say const timer, and it's gonna be set timeout console log timeout completed. Okay, it might look perfect, but there is a problem, and that is if the component unmounts, there could be a memory leak, because you are not gonna clean it up at the end. So to prevent this, we need something called a cleanup function to be able to avoid any memory leak associated with this timer. So we are gonna say return, we are gonna return our function for clearing off everything if this component unmounts. So we are gonna say clear timeout, this one, and inside here we are gonna pass our timer like that. Also, we can maybe say console log timer has been cleared on mount. So this basically ensures that our effect runs only once and it's not gonna run more than once, and there will be no memory leak to get us to worry. So let's proceed and check it out. Let's come here and right click, inspect, to be able to see our console. Let's refresh. As you can see, our timeout completed successfully after 3 seconds. So you realize there is nothing to worry us because there is no memory leak, there is nothing that is running after the component has unmounted. It's something necessary when dealing with, especially when dealing with subscriptions. We are going to be discussing very many scenarios when writing real-world projects where this return function really comes in handy, especially clearing out subscriptions like this. So it is also something to know. Alright guys, this was the basic overview of the useEffect hook, and we are going to be writing many more real-world projects using this hook. So getting a better understanding of it is something very good, and it really gives you confidence writing code that you're sure that is going to be performant and nothing is going to disturb your renders, or when the component mounts you are going to be sure what is happening, and when it unmounts, same thing, you're sure it is something very good. So in the next video we are going to be discussing about the use callback hook and the use memo hook. Those two we are going to discuss them together because they are really in the same bracket. The difference is just small. We are going to discuss it in the next part. So I thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.